My House of Horrors Chapter 611 to 620. The people in the room all turned to look at Jia Ming. From a bystander's perspective, Chen Ge indeed had no reason to kill Jia Ming. The police were not to be trifled with. Before they arrested Jia Ming, they had already investigated his social network. The first half of his life had nothing to do with Chen Ge. His body shrank back. After hearing what Chen Ge said, Jia Ming became even more afraid. I can't tell you. If I do, I won't be able to walk out of this hospital alive. He will use all kinds of methods to kill me. You won't be able to imagine how you will face death. He is a demon who flays and eats people. Quote. Don't keep changing the topic. If you don't tell me the truth, I will leave you alone in the same room with him, Li Jung said casually. Am I that scary? Chen Ge knew that Li Jung was purposely saying that to force the truth out of him, so he cooperated. He stood up to check the room's windows and door. After he made sure that they were all locked, he sat back down. There was no other way out. After some hesitation, Jia Ming finally said, I saw him kill someone. When he was running, he saw my face. When did that happen? Li Jung waved his hand to signal for the doctor to leave and turned on the recorder. About 3 to 4 years ago. Jia Ming looked at Chen Ge shyly. His voice was so soft that it sounded like the buzz of a mosquito. If one did not pay attention, one would not be able to hear him. I used to work at an insurance company. At the time, a real estate developer's family was involved in a car accident. The family was fine, but the car had a problem. The traffic police found out that the man was driving under the influence of alcohol. Other than that, the most serious injury on the car, after a professional appraisal, was found to be caused by the car owner when he was drunk. Therefore, I followed the rules and did not compensate him. Because of that, the man brought his people to the insurance company to cause trouble. The man was powerful, and the manager did not dare offend him, so he used me as a scapegoat. I was a hot-tempered person, so after the man started to beat me up, I retaliated immediately. In the end, both the man and I were sent to the police station. My wife spent a lot of effort to get me out. I lost my job, and the family spent a lot of money. I was so angry that I wanted to get revenge on that person. That night, I snuck into their home in the middle of the night. I wanted to scout the place out, but I accidentally discovered something very scary. Jia Ming paused at this point. He looked at Chen Ge, and his forehead was covered in sweat. Why don't you continue? Li Jung and the policewoman next to him were a little anxious. I was surprised to find that someone wanted to kill that real estate developer. After saying that, he raised his finger, but he did not dare to point it at Chen Ge. I just wanted to take revenge on him. I never wanted to kill anyone. His death has nothing to do with me. Things became complicated, and it involved another murder case. Li Jung frowned slightly. Who is the real estate agent you mentioned? I've met most of the real estate developers in Zhujiang. Quote. His name is Zhang Long. He once invested in Mingyang Residence, which is the largest unfinished building in eastern Zhujiang. It's him. Chen Ge and Li Jung shared a look, and many clues connected in their minds. Zhang Long died in a car accident. It was an accidental death. Our police department has a record of it. Li Jung pointed out the loophole in Jia Ming's story. You've been tricked. You're still in the dark. He was killed, and the killer is now. Jia Ming bit on the tip of his tongue and pointed at Chen Ge. He's sitting next to you. Quote. You said I killed Zhang Long. Then how come I don't have any recollection of this? Chen Ge observed Jia Ming's every movement. He realized that Jia Ming's action of biting on his tongue was similar to his own. In the past, when his mind was in a mess or he needed to stay calm in a dangerous situation, he would bite on the tip of his tongue and use the pain to stimulate himself. Jia Ming did not dare talk to Chen Ge. That shout earlier seemed to have drained all of his courage. What did you see? Why do you say the killer is Chen Ge? Li Jung was curious about this. This was the first time he had seen a suspect accuse the informant of being the killer after he was caught. Believe me, I remember his face very clearly. I'm sure it's him. Jia Ming continued the previous topic. The first time I went to find Zhang Long was at midnight. I planned to scout the place, but when I arrived at his bungalow, I realized I couldn't get in at all. There were too many security guards and cameras. But around 1 a.m., something happened at the bungalow. All the security guards ran toward one of the houses, and I took the chance to sneak in. The incident happened at the bungalow next to Zhang Long's home. The two dogs that the family kept were killed without a sound. The method was very cruel. The security locked down Zhang Long's neighbor's house and started to search for the dog killer. They made a lot of noise, but Zhang Long's bungalow was quiet. All the lights were off, and the security guards wouldn't open the door even if they called. Zhang Long might not be home, and I realized that my chance had come. I could sneak into his house to steal something valuable. I walked to the back of the bungalow and tried, but I realized that I couldn't get into the house at all, and it was surrounded by cameras. I was unwilling to give up, so I pushed on the back door, and I realized that the back door wasn't locked, it was unlatched. The back door was pushed open, and before I could react, the scene before me scared me out of my wits. A man was kneeling on the ground covered in blood. His expression was pained, and something seemed to be shoved into his mouth. Blood was still leaking out. Next to him, there was a man holding a bloodied knife between two fingers, and he seemed to be talking about something casually. Quote. Jia Ming turned to Chen Ge, and his hands tightened into fists. The veins on the back of his hands popped. The man who was kneeling on the ground covered in blood was Zhang Long, and the person next to him was him. Did I appear at Zhang Long's bungalow? Or several years ago? Chen Ge had no recollection of that at all. The man had to be lying, or the person that he saw was not Chen Ge but someone who looked similar to Chen Ge. The facial features are exactly the same. Your face is my nightmare, I remember it clearly. Jia Ming was on the verge of tears. At the time, Zhang Long begged me for help. When he opened his mouth to speak, blood slid down his lips. I didn't dare stay and ran. Wait, I have a question. Zhang Long died in a car accident in the end. There were no knife wounds on his body, and the time of death doesn't match up. Li Zheng was still on Chen Ge's side, and he felt like Jia Ming's words were not reliable. That was only the first time. After that, this demon haunted me. I even had the same dream for a few days. After I fell asleep, he crawled out from under my bed and stood by my bedside, telling me that after Zhang Long died, it would be my turn. Quote. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. What you think about in the day, you dream about at night. That's very normal. Li Zheng knew Chen Ge quite well. From how he saw it, with Chen Ge's personality, he would not have done something like hiding under the bed. I know you don't believe me, but it really wasn't a dream. Ji Ming lowered his voice, and his tone was strange. Have you ever thought about what your reflection is doing when you stand before the mirror to wash your face? Is he lowering his head to wash his face, or is he still standing in the mirror, looking down at you from top to bottom? Have you ever encountered a situation where someone asked you to borrow something from inside the toilet cubicle, but when you came out, you were actually alone inside the toilet? Have you ever realized that when you call the people closest to you, they will say that there is a lot of noise in your room, like there are many things standing next to you? Quote. Ji Ming's hands gripped the mattress tighter and tighter. I've experienced all of that before. I think it's better for me to call the doctor in. Li Zheng was an atheist. He had studied basic criminal psychology and abnormal psychology at the police academy. From his perspective, if Ji Ming was not lying, then there had to be something wrong with his brain. He might be suffering from paranoia. Before the doctor comes in, can you listen to me tell you a few stories? Ji Ming leaned his head toward Chen Ge. It's about him and me. Do you two look that close? Li Zheng nodded in agreement. After leaving Zhang Long's home, I ran for half an hour in a panic before I took a big detour back to my home. At the time, I was renting a house. The landlady was an old lady. She lived on the first floor, and we lived on the second floor. The third floor was a storage room. When I returned, it was already very late. After I entered the stairwell, the old lady's cat kept meowing. It was not the usual cute meowing, it was short, sharp, and very scary. Perhaps she was woken up by the cat's meowing. After a while, the old lady opened the door and said something to me. Be careful when you walk. Why are you running around at night instead of sleeping? Ji Ming could not forget the old lady's expression at the time. I quickly apologized to the old lady. When I reached the second floor, I realized that something was wrong. I turned back to look, and I was alone in the dark corridor. Why would the old lady say, "You guys"? At the time, I felt a chill run down my spine. I ran to the door to look for the key, but the more anxious I was, the less I could find it. Then, something strange happened. There is a thumping sound coming from the storeroom on the third floor. It sounds like a ball-shaped object is rolling on the floor. When I moved in, the old lady told me that the third floor was empty and used to store junk. I once asked her the reason, and she said that her son's family used to live on the third floor. Later, the three of them got into a car accident. Although the third floor was vacant, the old lady didn't want to rent it out. She wanted to keep it as a memento for herself. Quote, "The third floor, which has never been occupied, made a sound. I did not dare stay in the stairwell for too long. I searched for the key in my jacket pocket, but then the sound stopped. Out of curiosity, I looked up the stairs. There was a pair of gray feet at the corner of the third floor. Due to the angle, I could only see the pair of feet. I was scared out of my wits. I opened the door as fast as I could. Entering the room, I was still unsettled. I closed the front door, and when I was about to close the inner door, my curiosity got the best of me. I wanted to see the owner of the pair of gray feet. Leaning against the gap of the door, I adjusted the angle and slowly squatted down. My eyes moved upward, and I saw another pair of gray legs. Just as I was about to move upward, a child's head suddenly appeared in my sight. Its posture was very strange. The legs were straight, but the head was tilted so that it was almost touching the soles of its feet. This is not something a normal person can do. I slammed the door shut, and then I remembered to turn on the lights in the living room. I knew the approximate location of the switch. My hand moved in that direction, and when I touched the switch, I felt like I was touching something. It felt like a living person's skin. I felt like I was touching a stranger's finger in my own home. Pressing the switch, the light shone on me, and it gave me a sense of security that I hadn't felt in a long time. I started to call my wife's name, but there was no reply. I was so afraid that I turned on all the lights in the room. Finally, I found a note left behind by my wife next to the phone in the living room. She said that my father-in-law was seriously ill, and the doctor had told her to go to the hospital. The food was in the fridge, and she told me to heat it up for myself when I returned. My wife was not home, so I put the note away and looked at my own hand. Earlier, I had indeed touched another person's hand. Now, other than myself, there was someone else in this room. I did not dare go to sleep. I checked all the possible hiding places in the room, but there was nothing. I tried to call my wife, but no one answered. I was so afraid. I turned on the television and purposely turned up the volume. Then I made myself a few cups of thick coffee. I planned to stay in the living room for the night and move out of this old house the next morning. I did not have the heart to watch the show. When the drowsiness came, I kept drinking the coffee. Finally, when the sun rose, I could not hold it in anymore, so I went to the toilet. After that, I stood before the sink and wanted to wash my face with cold water. I turned on the faucet, and looking at the water, I felt strangely nervous. It felt like someone was watching me. I suspected that the stranger who followed me into the house was hiding in the toilet. I glanced around the toilet, but there was no place to hide. Straightening my back, I looked at my hunched and haggard self in the mirror and shook my head. I made up my mind to move after the sun rose and find a place with more people. Putting down the towel, I felt like something was wrong. Before I could think about it, the phone in the living room rang. I was shocked and hurried to answer it. It was my wife's voice on the other end of the line. By then, the sky was no longer completely dark. My wife said that she had called me many times, but no one answered. She was very worried. Speaking of that, I felt uneasy. Last night, I was the one who called her many times, but she was the one who did not answer. I glanced at the line subconsciously. Just as I was about to tell her about this, she suddenly asked me why there was someone else in the room. She heard someone talking on my side, and the voice was very similar to my father-in-law's. It sounded like he was saying, "Behind, behind." I quickly turned to look behind me, but there was no one behind me. Further away, I could only see my reflection in the mirror facing me. He was holding a phone in his hand, and his actions were exactly the same as mine. The sun was about to rise. I told my wife to take care of my father-in-law. After hanging up, I sat back down, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like something was wrong. Holding the cup, I thought for a long time until I saw the reflection on the cup. When I face the teacup, the reflection on the teacup is also facing me. I suddenly realized that when I turned to look at the mirror earlier, the reflection in the mirror did not turn around. He was facing me, as if. Jia Ming was rendered speechless like someone was strangling his neck. His eyes were filled with fear. A chill came from behind me, and the living room sofa was facing away from the bathroom. I could feel something behind me at this moment. It was like there was a person standing there. I did not dare turn around. I turned the cup, and my eyes moved downward. I wanted to use the cup to see what was behind me. Turning the cup bit by bit, the cold air behind me slowly approached. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Just as I was about to look behind me, I felt a tingling sensation on the exposed skin of my neck, as if hair had fallen on my neck. My arms were shaking, and I could not control it. The cup fell to the ground, and the coffee inside splashed everywhere. I screamed, and I grabbed the ashtray and fruit platter from the coffee table and threw them behind me. Then I rushed toward the door without a care for anything else. Holding the door lock with both hands, I turned back to look into the room. There was nothing in the room. The only difference was that the television signal was jammed. There was no image, only a flickering blue and white background. The surroundings were so quiet that I could only hear the static coming from the television. I did not dare stay in the room for long. I wanted to run out, but once I was reminded of the boy whose head and legs were bent at impossible angles in the stairwell, I retreated. I was afraid that he was just outside the door. The stairwell was not safe. I did not know what to do, and my body froze at the door. Just as I was hesitating, the image on the television flashed faster and faster. I vaguely noticed that in the flickering images, a woman's face was slowly becoming clearer. Quote. I did not dare stay any longer. I opened the door and ran out. Without looking around, I rushed into the street, but the dim street did not give me a sense of security. I ran like a madman, and in the end, I sat in the middle of the street. Only when I was illuminated by the streetlights did I stop. By the time he was done, Jia Ming's forehead and back were already drenched in cold sweat. Everyone in the audience looked unnatural. Jia Ming's tone of voice, coupled with his panicked expression, made the people around him feel like they were in the same situation. The policewoman's grip on the pen visibly tightened. Li Jung glanced at Chen Ge. Did you hear anything? Before Dr. Gao disappeared, he told me that you're also proficient in psychology. In his eyes, are ghosts the embodiment of something? Quote. His story is very interesting. I can analyze it briefly first. Chen Ge stood up and sat down beside the bed. Initially, Jia Ming said that he saw someone threatening Zhang Long at Zhang Long's bungalow. The person held a knife and forced Zhang Long to do something that would cause him great pain. And he was very sure that the person looked exactly like me. Quote. After he found out about this, he ran back to his home. When he entered the stairwell, the old lady said to him, "Be careful when you walk." In other words, the old lady saw that Jia Ming was not alone in the stairwell, and that person was very close to him. Close enough for the old lady to think that the person behind Jia Ming was with Jia Ming. Chen Ge turned to Jia Ming with a smile. If he is telling the truth, then from that moment on, there has been something following behind him, and this thing is most likely the bad guy that he saw at the bungalow, me, who threatened Zhang Long with a knife. Ignoring how difficult it was to follow behind him silently and how did me manage to trick him and get discovered by an old man like you, Jia Ming, and Jia Ming. Assuming that everything is true, we can continue our analysis. Then, he ran to his home on the second floor. When he opened the door, he saw a pair of feet and a child's head at the corner of the third floor. The place where the child appeared is worth thinking about, it was on the third floor. Jia Ming himself said that the old lady's son and his family were involved in a car accident. The third floor was prepared for the deceased, and he wanted to keep it as a memento. Let me make a bold guess. The child on the third floor is the old lady's grandson, the child who died in the car accident. But that's strange. Jia Ming has stayed at the old lady's place for so long, and he has not seen a ghost, so why did he see a ghost at night? Quote. Chen Ge analyzed the situation seriously, but from Li Jung and the female officer's perspective, it was more like one madman was tutoring another madman at a mental hospital. The answer is simple. The child's ghost also saw the person behind Jia Ming. Pay attention to the way the child appeared. He stood at the corner of the staircase and poked his head down like he was peeking. This proves that the person behind Jia Ming is much scarier than he is. Chen Ge smiled. A human being can scare a ghost. This is the first time I've heard of that. Quote. After entering the room, there's another detail. When Jia Ming realized that the person in the mirror was moving in the opposite direction from him, he felt something coming from behind him. When he turned the cup to see who it was, his neck appeared to be touched by a strand of hair. Chen Ge paused. This is very important. I have short hair, and most men have short hair. When he lowered his head, the hair would not have reached his neck. In other words, the person standing behind him was a woman, or more accurately, a female ghost. After that, when he was about to escape the room, he saw that there was something wrong with the television. The image on the screen started to flicker, and a woman's face appeared. This could also mean that even if there was a ghost in the room, it would be a female ghost. Combined with what I said earlier, this female ghost's real identity is probably the old lady's daughter-in-law who died in the car accident. In Jia Ming's story, there were two ghosts, and they were both related to the story that the old lady told him. The reason this happened is probably because of what Jia Ming did that night. He was under a lot of psychological pressure, and that caused him to keep giving himself psychological hints. He started to hallucinate, and the ghost in the story came to life. Chen Ge used some professional jargon that he had learned from Dr. Gao. Occasionally, he would mix in a few English words. He had no idea what they meant, but when he said them, they sounded very professional. With his explanation, Li Jung and the female officer's expressions softened, and they kept nodding. Compared to a ghost, they were more inclined to believe that Jia Ming had lost his mind. After clearing himself of suspicion, Chen Ge looked at Jia Ming calmly. Perhaps it was his gaze that reminded Jia Ming of something scary, or perhaps Jia Ming sensed danger, but his body suddenly started to convulse, and very suddenly, he fainted on the bed. I didn't touch him. Chen Ge raised his hands and stood at the side of the room. He watched the doctors and nurses rush in and out of the room, and his hands slowly tightened. There were some things that he did not tell the police. Actually, he believed that Jia Ming was not lying. The person who looked like Chen Ge should be the shadow, but as for why he looked like Chen Ge himself had no idea. The things that Jia Ming said later were probably true. The shadow had followed him back to his rented place, and he was seen by the old lady. It had alerted the ghosts that lived on the third floor of the old lady's house. The child ghost was the old lady's grandson, and the female ghost was the old lady's daughter-in-law. There should be a male ghost that Jia Ming had not seen. The shadow followed Jia Ming home, and the three ghosts were protecting him. Unfortunately, the difference in power was too big, so the ghosts could only use their own method to warn him and make him sense the danger. Chen Ge knew that there was a high chance that Jia Ming was not lying, but he still wanted to stir up trouble because he had no way to confirm whether the shadow was still with Jia Ming or not. The shadow was very cunning, and all of this could be a trap that the shadow wanted to use the police to set up. It's not that hard to prove whether Jia Ming is telling the truth or not. Chen Ge called Li Jung outside the sickroom. He found out the location of the old lady that Jia Ming had mentioned. Then he left the hospital and planned to go and ask her personally. He wanted to know what the old lady had seen that night, and he wanted to find the ghosts and ask them how they felt at the time. The theme park opened at 9 a.m. There was not much time left for Chen Ge, so he decided to go and scout out the place. Chen Ge had no idea when Jia Ming would wake up. After giving Li Jung some advice, he left the room. Inspector Li, don't let your guard down. This person is very dangerous. He is definitely not as harmless as he appears to be. Don't treat him like a normal mental patient. He hailed a cab to head to the place where Jia Ming first rented. The sun had just risen, and there were very few people on the street. Occasionally, a few cars would pass by. Chen Ge did not sleep the whole night. First, he went to the rehabilitation school to chase the water ghost, then he went to the dam to fish up the body, and then he returned to the hospital to cooperate with the police to investigate Jia Ming. He made full use of the night, and he did not rest for even a minute. His head was heavy, and drowsiness washed over him. Chen Ge took a nap in the cab, and he was woken up by the driver when he reached his destination. He only slept for a few minutes, but it was useless. Chen Ge felt like his brain was filled with water. Rubbing his face, he entered the alley, and a chill hit him in the face. Perhaps due to the layout of the building, the light from the outside did not shine into the alley. No wonder Jia Ming did not dare to stop after escaping from the building. He only relaxed when he reached the road. This was the old city, and the surrounding buildings were not tall. Most of them were small buildings with 2 or 3 floors. They looked old, and some of the walls had the red word, demolition, written on them. The things that Jia Ming told me at the hospital should have happened several years ago. I hope the old lady hasn't moved away, and the house is still there. Following the address provided by Li Zheng, he searched the alley for a long time before he found the old lady's house. The neighbors on the left and right had moved away, and one of the windows had a large hole in it. It was probably deserted for a long time. This place is quite hard to find. Chen Ge entered the stairwell and saw a few pots of flowers placed in the corner. Probably because they had not been exposed to sunlight for a long time, most of the flowers had withered, and the leaves were yellow. Is anyone home? Chen Ge knocked on the door on the first floor and called softly. There was no answer, and only his voice echoed in the stairwell. Turning his head to look upstairs, Chen Ge had a feeling that the place was weird. He tried to pull the door, and the anti-theft door on the first floor was pulled open. No lock. Chen Ge was curious and opened the door completely. A strong musty smell wafted out of the room. There were some old things piled up in the room. The sofa was the kind that was wrapped in cloth from more than 20 years ago. The wall clock and the low dining table looked quite old. There is no dust on the doorknob, and the clock in the room moves normally. There should be someone living here. Without permission, Chen Ge would not enter someone else's house. He shouted again from outside the house, but there was still no response. However, there was a special sound coming from the roof, like a deflated ball rolling on the ground. On the 3rd floor, Chen Ge walked upstairs. When he passed the 2nd floor, he found that the door on the 2nd floor was also open, but there was no smell inside. It was as if someone cleaned it every day. After stopping at the entrance of the 2nd floor for a while, Chen Ge continued up. The window at the corner of the corridor was covered with black cloth, and there were no lights on the walls. The sky outside was already bright, but the corridor was still dark. Is anyone there? The strange voice crawled into his ears. Chen Ge was like the main character in a horror movie, and he walked step by step towards the source of the voice. Stepping on the stairs, his body moved deeper into the darkness. He held the railing, and he felt the chill that came from his palms. There was no light on the 3rd floor of the old house. Chen Ge took out his phone and turned on the flashlight. He shone it at the source of the voice, and when the light swept over it, something scurried away. His muscles tensed, and Chen Ge scanned the 3rd floor. The door here had been removed, and the room was filled with all kinds of junk. The most eye-catching thing was a piano covered in dust. There were fewer keys, and it looked like an old man whose teeth were about to fall out had opened his mouth. Their family used to have a good life. They have a 3-story house, and they should have been able to afford a piano. Chen Ge walked to the piano. His fingers pressed on the keys, but the melodious sound that he expected did not appear. Chen Ge turned to look inside the piano. A large pile of hair was shoved inside the piano. Perhaps it was his imagination, but Chen Ge realized that the hair appeared to be moving, shrinking into the interior of the piano. Reaching his hand into the piano, Chen Ge pulled out a handful of hair with a calm expression. There are black and white hairs, and the edges of the cut are neat like they were cut off. Was this something that the landlady purposely collected? The landlady's daughter-in-law was very young when the accident happened, so her hair could not have been white. Why would the landlady stuff so much hair inside the piano? Chen Ge tossed the hair back into the piano, but when he pulled his arm back, his eyes caught a flash of a gray face inside the pile of hair. It appeared to have been lying inside the hair, looking at Chen Ge. What is it? The 3rd floor was the room for the departed spirits, so for Chen Ge, this kind of supernatural phenomenon was normal. He did not panic. He placed the phone aside and aimed the light at the interior of the piano. Then he reached into the pile of hair. Are you still inside? No one knew what was hidden under the hair, and no one knew what they would find later. It did not feel good to touch the hair with one's fingers. After searching for a long time, Chen Ge still could not find the person. He pulled his hands back and glanced at the clock next to him. The The watch was very similar to the one at the landlady's home, but only the second hand was moving. It turned again and again, but the time on the watch did not change. It was fixed at 3:44 p.m. Is it 3 p.m. or 3 a.m.? What happened at this time? Just as Chen Ge's attention was attracted by the clock, something ran out from under the piano. The sound of a ball rolling echoed in the room. When Chen Ge reacted, the sound had already reached the second floor. It ran away. No, it should be leading the way for me. Chen Ge returned to the second floor. For some reason, he felt like something was staring at his back. The sound disappeared on the second floor, and coincidentally, the angle of the door on the second floor was obviously different from before. It's hiding inside the room. Chen Ge pushed open the door on the second floor. This was the room in Jia Ming's story. However, different from Jia Ming's description, all the windows in this room were boarded up. Even though it was clean and tidy, it gave off a very creepy feeling. Entering the room, Chen Ge headed straight for the bathroom with the heaviest yin energy in the building. Pushing open the door, he scanned the room briefly before stopping before the mirror. Staring at his reflection in the mirror, Chen Ge looked for a long time. If a person looked at themselves in the mirror for a long time, their brain would develop the illusion that the person in the mirror was becoming more and more different from themselves. In fact, there would be an indescribable sense of strangeness and fear. After looking at the mirror for a whole 5 minutes, Chen Ge did not notice anything wrong with the mirror. He suspected that the shadow had left after achieving his goal and did not leave any traps in the mirror. However, for safety's sake, when Chen Ge prepared to leave, he used his yin-yang vision again. The moment his pupils narrowed, his eyes caught a pair of gray legs. A child whose head was about to touch the ground was standing at the door of the bathroom, looking at him. Whipping his body around, Chen Ge realized that there was nothing behind him. He glanced at the mirror again. This time, even with his yin-yang vision, he could not see the child's shadow in the mirror. Where did it go? When Chen Ge walked out from the bathroom and looked toward the living room, his expression shifted. The door to the living room was closed. The windows were boarded up, and now the door was closed as well. The room was suffocating. Is this the child's doing? He walked to the living room door and turned the lock, but he realized that the door was locked from the inside. Without the key, he could not open it. Just as Chen Ge was struggling with the lock, a soft sound came from a corner of the living room. Then, the sound of static crawled into Chen Ge's ears. He turned back to look, and in the dark and depressing room, the television that had been turned off had been switched on. A distorted image that alternated between blue and white appeared on the screen, and it would flicker occasionally. This scene has appeared in Jia Ming's story before. Chen Ge's voice was calm, but his heart was racing. Before he finished, the television screen flickered even more violently, and a blurry shadow could be seen in the blue and white image. The shadow seemed to be slowly approaching Chen Ge. Initially, it was only the size of a fist, but it gradually grew to the size of a head. As it got closer, Chen Ge could see it more clearly. It was the shadow of a woman. Her body was twisted into the shape of a fried dough twist, and her clothes were squeezing into her skin. Her chin was broken, and her eyes were bulging out of their sockets. The screen flickered faster and faster, and with each flicker, the blurry woman would be one step closer to him. Chen Ge's heart started to race uncontrollably. When the woman grew to the size of a real person, and the television screen could not capture her whole body, Chen Ge stopped hesitating. He reached behind him and mumbled 2 words. Shu Yin. His fingers reached behind him, but there was nothing there. Chen Ge's heart skipped a beat. He was suddenly reminded that he had just received a call from Li Zheng that morning, and he had to go to the hospital to cooperate with the police. Time was tight, and his backpack was wet from the dam. Furthermore, it was almost dawn, and he was going to find the police. There would not be any danger, so he did not bring his backpack. With his frozen fingers hovering behind him, Chen Ge slowly raised his head to look at the television. Cold sweat slid down his face, and his eyes slowly moved up. Finally, he saw the screen. There was only a flickering blue and white image on the screen, but the woman's figure had disappeared. The pressure disappeared instantly, and Chen Ge sighed in relief. However, at that moment, a numbness came from the back of his neck like someone's hair had accidentally brushed against his skin. His eyelids twitched. Chen Ge had heard this scene before from Jia Ming's story. He slowly turned around, and out of the corner of his eyes, a pair of pale eyes were looking at him from behind. The woman, whose body was twisted into the shape of a fried dough twist, her chin broken, and her eyes bulging out of their sockets, was standing behind him. His face twitched, and Chen Ge felt like the air had frozen. He looked at the woman's messy hair that appeared to have been pulled madly, and he slowly took a step back. His feet tripped over something, and Chen Ge collapsed onto the sofa. He looked at the approaching shadow and said instinctively, "If I told you I'm here to help you, would you believe me?" The dirty hair swayed in the wind, and the sound of bones grinding came from the woman's throat. She moved very fast, and when Chen Ge opened his mouth, her body was already pressing down on him. From the woman's reaction, she did not want to listen to Chen Ge. "I haven't felt this way for a long time." It was like dancing on the edge of a cliff. Cold sweat poured down his face. Chen Ge leaned against the back of the sofa, and his hands gripped the armrests of the sofa. "I don't mean to offend you, but I'm here to clarify something. A few years ago, a tenant in this room was haunted by a ghost. At the time, you guys appeared to warn him. Now his life is in danger. If we don't get to the bottom of this, he probably won't live for long." Quote. If this was anyone else, they would have screamed like crazy or even had a mental breakdown. But Chen Ge was different. He used the shortest amount of time to say everything that he wanted to say. The woman did not come any closer. Chen Ge sighed in relief. He wanted to change to a more comfortable position, but when he turned his neck, he saw a child standing next to him. The child's skin was an abnormal grayish white. His spine was broken, and his head hung from his chest. His eyes rolled upward, and he stared at Chen Ge. "Is this your child? Such a cute child." Chen Ge's lips curved into a smile. He knew that Ji Yu Ming did not hold much weight in the hearts of the ghosts. After a moment's hesitation, he added, "That tenant is my best friend. He once told me that the happiest time of his life was spent here. The landlady treated him very well, and he treasured that memory. But recently, he seems to have changed into a different person. He said that only by destroying everything that was good would he be able to control himself. Initially, I thought he was joking, but who would have thought that he was really crazy? If I did not call the police to stop him last night, he would have appeared here with a knife in his hand." Quote. Being sandwiched between two ghosts, Chen Ge had no idea what he was saying. In any case, he just pushed everything onto Ji Yu Ming. The ghosts at the old house should have seen the shadow before. Chen Ge believed that if he told them about this, they would be reminded of what had happened years ago. He did not need to convince the ghost inside the old manor, he just needed them to give him a chance to speak. As long as they did not kill him on the spot, the rest would be easy. "I do not believe that my friend would do such a thing, but I have to tell you that the landlady is in danger. The monster inside my friend's body wants to kill her." The more Chen Ge spoke, the more excited he became. Slowly, he became less afraid. The old lady is a kind person. Kind people shouldn't be hurt. To the ghosts at the old house, Ji Yu Ming was just a passerby, but the old lady was different. She was their family. After Chen Ge said that, the boy next to him turned to look at the female ghost. Chen Ge could not read anything from the female ghost's face. His brain turned quickly. Combining his previous experience, he came up with 3 different plans in his mind. However, just as he was about to execute the third plan, the female ghost and the boy suddenly moved to the side. The door was pushed open. An old lady around 70 or 80 years old was holding the key. She was mumbling to herself, "Qian Qian. You're back." Quote. The old lady's face was full of wrinkles. She looked into the room with anticipation, and her eyes met with Chen Ge, who was lying on the sofa. "Please, let me explain." Chen Ge quickly stood up and walked toward the old lady, but at that moment, someone pulled on his pants. He turned to look behind him. The boy was hiding behind the sofa. He reached out to grab Chen Ge's leg. The strange head swayed left and right like it was warning Chen Ge not to tell anyone about his and the female ghost's existence. "Don't worry. Who are you talking to?" Even though the old lady was old, she was not muddle-headed. She walked into the room with the key and turned to look behind Chen Ge. By then, the boy and the female ghost had already disappeared. "Did I say anything earlier?" When Chen Ge saw the old lady enter the room, he whispered, "Granny, please don't misunderstand. I'm not a thief. I just came to ask you something." I saw that the door was not locked, so I wanted to come in to find you, but the wind blew, and I accidentally closed the door. Can the wind lock the door from the outside? The old lady was not easy to fool. She looked at Chen Ge and suddenly reached into her pocket. When Chen Ge was on high alert, she took out a clean handkerchief. Wipe your sweat. Even if you're a thief, it's fine. There's nothing valuable in this old house of mine. Granny, you're such a nice person. Chen Ge completely relaxed. He did not want to beat around the bush anymore. I have a friend who used to stay at your place for a period of time. Now, he's not doing well. He keeps saying that there's another person living inside his body, and he keeps saying that he wants to destroy all the good memories he has. You're here because of Jia Ming as well, right? The old lady interrupted Chen Ge. With his brows slightly furrowed, Chen Ge immediately asked, "Someone came to find him before I did. A few days ago, a police officer with the surname Yan came to my place and confirmed some things with me." Surname Yan. What did he ask? Chen Ge was instantly reminded of Captain Yan. He probably asked me about my impression of Jia Ming. The boy came from the countryside. He's hard-working, but he's stubborn and unlucky. The old lady sounded regretful when she mentioned Jia Ming. Then did he ask why Jia Ming moved away? Chen Ge realized that he had underestimated the police station. Before Jia Ming said anything, Captain Yan's team had already investigated Jia Ming's past. He did. Actually, I don't know why the boy was in such a hurry to move away. He didn't even take his bedding or luggage with him. I wanted to mail them to him, but he refused. Then can you remember what happened the night before he moved away? He should have returned home very late that night. Chen Ge wanted to compare Jia Ming's words with the old lady's to see whether Jia Ming was lying or not. I was in my room the whole time, and I didn't. At this point, the old lady suddenly stopped. She stared at Chen Ge for a long time. Have I seen you before? Seen me before? This time, Chen Ge was really surprised. Yes, I remember now. That night, I heard Jia Ming pacing back and forth in his room. I thought he was arguing with Xiao Ling, so I went to talk to him. But when I reached the second floor, I saw someone standing at his door. The old lady slowly raised her arm, and her thin finger pointed at Chen Ge. It was you, the person standing at his door that day was you. The old lady panicked. If things had progressed according to her plan, Chen Ge would have smiled wickedly and said, "Since you've seen my face, then I can't let you live anymore." But in reality, Chen Ge voluntarily moved away from the old lady. He sat down on the sofa and started to think. The old lady had also seen the person who looked like Chen Ge. This indirectly proved that the shadow was related to Chen Ge, or at least, they looked similar. No wonder the child and the ghost kept staring at my face when they saw me. They should have been shocked as well. Chen Ge grumbled softly. Then he turned to the old lady. "Granny, the person who looked like me that night, did he do anything strange?" The old lady shook her head. "He just stood outside the door. By the way, I was holding the light, but when the light shone on him, I realized that the person did not have a shadow." A person without a shadow. As long as it was a person, they would have a shadow, unless they were not a person, or they were someone's shadow that had snuck out. Chen Ge confirmed with the old lady again. "Did you see him clearly?" "Yes." In the old lady's memory, the strange man looked exactly like Chen Ge. She looked at Chen Ge before her, and she had a strange feeling. That day, he stood outside the door. I asked him everything, but he didn't answer me. He seemed to be mumbling a person's name. A person's name. Can you still remember that name? To ease the old lady's suspicion, Chen Ge took out his phone and turned on the flashlight to shine on himself. His shadow appeared behind him. "Granny, I have a shadow. The person you saw only looked similar to me. I can't remember that clearly. I'll tell you when I do." The old lady exchanged phone numbers with Chen Ge. "Granny, other than the name, do you remember anything else about that person? How long did he stand outside the door? After he left, did anything happen to this building?" Chen Ge was worried that there was a trap left behind by the shadow inside the building. The enemy had set up the whole of eastern Zhejiang, so he had to be careful when dealing with them. After Ji Yu Ming ran out, the person outside the door disappeared as well. After he left, I didn't lose anything, but I keep feeling like something is missing. I can't explain it, like something very important has been taken away by the man. The old lady sighed. With her back hunched, she walked slowly around the room. I've searched the whole building, but nothing is missing. However, that feeling won't go away. It's quite uncomfortable. Why do I feel like something is missing? I've said everything that I need to say. When you leave, remember to close the door for me. The old lady seemed to be reminded of something sad. She stopped talking to Chen Ge and walked out shakily. Chen Ge was about to leave with the old lady when someone pulled on his shirt. Turning back to look, 5 crooked fingers gripped the corner of Chen Ge's shirt, and the female ghost crawled out from under the coffee table. I didn't plan to leave. Chen Ge's eyes scanned the female ghost and the child. He was suddenly reminded of something. After he entered the room, he only saw the female ghost and the child, but he did not see the old man's son. A family of 3 got into a car accident. The wife and child are here, so there is no reason for the husband to not show up. He thought about what the old lady had said earlier. After the shadow left, she felt that she had lost something very important. Could it be that her son had been taken away by the shadow? Chen Ge decided to give it a try. After a moment of silence, he asked, "A few years ago, you should have seen the evil spirit that looked similar to me. Can you tell me anything about him?" The 2 malicious spirits lay in the distance, staring straight at Chen Ge. No one knew what they were thinking. If I don't kill him, one day, I will be killed by him. If you have been harmed by him before, then he is our common enemy. Chen Ge bent down and reached out his hands. He wanted to hold the female ghost's crooked, bloodied fingers. I can help you. I'm not just saying that. When the female ghost sensed that Chen Ge was going to shake her hand, she immediately moved away. The room became very quiet. Moments later, the boy ran into the bedroom and pulled out an old school bag from under the bed. He took out a pen and paper and placed them on the coffee table. The female ghost's messy hair curled around the pen, and she started to write crooked words on the paper. He's alive. He's not completely dead. The shadow is only a part of him. To make us leave, my husband stayed behind. He ate my husband, and he's growing stronger. Chen Ge read the words on the paper. What does he mean by alive? The shadow is still alive. He's a human. But how could a human be eaten by a ghost? Chen Ge had no idea what the female ghost's definition of death was. It should be different from the medical definition of death, but even so, it was enough to shock Chen Ge. The shadow's original form cannot be considered a ghost, or rather, he's different from a normal ghost. This enemy sure is hard to read. When he was fighting with the Society of Strange Tales, even though the members were all mysterious, at least Chen Ge could confirm that they were all living people. The Society of Strange Tales was based on living people, and ghosts were just tools. However, this culprit in Eastern Zhejiang gave Chen Ge a completely different feeling. Until now, he had no idea whether the culprit was a human or a ghost. After reading the handwriting, Chen Ge was even more confused. That's all. Chen Ge put down the paper, and the female ghost's hair curled around the pen as she continued to write. When he ate my husband, he said that with each death, the resentment in his heart will intensify, and with each consumption, he will get closer to that person. One day, he will return to Western Zhejiang and push open that door with his own hands. The words on the paper were illogical, but it made Chen Ge's heart skip a beat. This sentence revealed a lot of information, especially the last sentence. The shadow said that he would personally push open the door in Western Zhejiang. Chen Ge suspected that the door that the shadow wanted to push open was the door inside the haunted house's toilet. Currently, the haunted house was on the rise, but once the door inside the toilet was pushed open, the situation would change. In other words, all the effort that he had put into obtaining the black phone would go to waste. Just who is this thing? The door inside the haunted house was Chen Ge's taboo. Whoever dared to touch that door, he would not rest until one of them was dead. This was related to his foundation, and there was no room for negotiation. The female ghost did not know what Chen Ge was thinking. She continued to write on the corner of the paper. There are 10 places in Eastern Zhejiang that are very haunted. The man has consumed the ghosts at 5 of them, and it was not until he was at White Dragon Cave Tunnel that he was injured for the first time. The shadow only appears at night, and he hates light and the sound of children crying. Quote. After the ghost finished writing, she looked at Chen Ge deeply and then disappeared from the room with the boy. The people in Eastern Zhejiang are all superstitious. I've heard about these 10 ghost stories before, but I didn't expect there to be only 5 left. But then again, the shadow's first encounter was at White Dragon Cave Tunnel. Last night, Jia Ming fainted at the entrance of White Dragon Cave Tunnel. Could he have fainted there on purpose to lure me into the tunnel to investigate and then use me to kill him? In Chen Ge's mind, the shadow was an extremely cunning person, so he had to consider the worst-case scenario. He hates light and the sound of children crying. I can make use of those two weaknesses. Chen Ge shoved the paper on the table into his pocket. When he was about to leave, he remembered that he had forgotten to ask the girl if she was willing to come with him to move to a bigger and more comfortable environment. After giving it some thought, Chen Ge took out another piece of paper from the boy's bag and wrote on it with the pen that the ghost had used earlier. If you run into any trouble, you can come find me at the haunted house at Western Zhujiang's New Century Park. Think about it. The boy is not young anymore, and there are many professional teachers and friends of his age at my haunted house. Sometimes, you should think about his future. After placing the paper at the most obvious spot, Chen Ge turned to leave the room. The sound of his footsteps was small, a result of his training during many trial missions. When he reached the first floor, the door to the old lady's room suddenly opened. "Granny, how can I help you?" Quote. The old lady looked at Chen Ge and hesitated. In the end, she shook her head and returned to her room. Chen Ge stood outside the door. He could guess that the old lady had realized that her family had not left, but neither of them had said anything. They also do not wish for you to live in this lonely world alone. Turning to leave the building, Chen Ge hailed a cab to return to the park. A new day had begun. Chen Ge arrived at New Century Park at 8:40 a.m. The park was not open yet, but there were already many visitors waiting at the entrance. Looking at the excited visitors who kept chatting with their friends, Chen Ge smiled. His work could bring joy to the visitors and help them chase away their unhappiness, and that gave him a sense of achievement. Among the crowd, Chen Ge saw some familiar faces, and the topic of their conversation was mostly haunted house. The large number of returning customers proved that the haunted house's scary rating system was correct. Those who had challenged a low-level scenario would definitely be curious about a higher-level scenario, and with the encouragement of their friends, the chance of them returning was very high. The app that Director Luo had designed for Haunted House also became very popular. Not only the visitors of the haunted house, many fans of supernatural phenomena in different cultures also downloaded it. The app was slowly becoming the biggest social platform for haunted house enthusiasts in the country. The number of daily downloads and active users continued to increase. According to rumors, there were even advertisers who approached Director Luo, but he rejected them directly. Director Luo had a good foresight. Haunted House was the theme park's main attraction, and the app was only a support. Everything was to serve the haunted house, so he would not let a small advertising fee affect the user experience. "Boss, where did you go last night?" Shu Wan and Xiao Jiyu guarded the haunted house's gate, one on the left and the other on the right, like door gods. "It's hard to explain to you. You'll find out on the news later." Chen Ge's answer was arrogant. Is it legal news? Even though Xiao Jiyu had not been at the haunted house for long, he was used to his boss's actions. When he shared a room with someone else, his roommates would think it was weird. While most young people were watching videos or playing games, Jiyu Feiyu would turn on the television and watch the news on Zhujiang's local channel. His roommates could not understand Xiao Jiyu. Normal people would not understand the feeling of seeing their boss on a legal news show. After putting on Xiao Jiyu and Shu Wan's makeup, the theme park officially opened for business. Shu Shu and the staff were maintaining order outside, while Chen Ge was free. Looking at the tourists going in and out, Chen Ge felt that this kind of life was pretty good. A haunted house relies on the unknown and novelty to attract visitors. Only by continuously unlocking new scenarios can it maintain its liveliness. Chen Ge took out the black phone and looked through the missions on it. The deadline for the School of the Afterlife was almost here. Chen Ge was not going to give up on this 4-star mission no matter what. I can't drag this out any longer. Tonight, I'll go to White Dragon Cave Tunnel to have a talk with the woman from the car accident. Since she once had a conflict with the shadow, it shouldn't be too hard to convince her. Chen Ge put down the black phone and glanced at his own phone. The weather tonight is not bad, but the weather forecast says there will be a storm tomorrow night. I can drive the bus on Route 104 to Eastern Zhujiang to try my luck. Even if I don't run into the woman in the raincoat, I should be able to trick some passengers. He found a pen and paper inside the haunted house and started to scribble. Tonight, I'll go to White Dragon Cave Tunnel to complete the 3-star trial mission. Tomorrow, I'll go find the woman in the raincoat and buy a batch of strong lights. After that, I'll bring all my employees to Liwan City to challenge that 3.5-star mission. Xiao Biyu had once warned Chen Ge that the next time he entered Liwan City, his life would be in danger. He had no idea what he would run into in Liwan City next time, but it was always better to be prepared. Xiao Chen, what are you busy with? Shu Shu's voice came from the door. He was a coward and had never entered Chen Ge's haunted house. How can I help you? Director Luo is looking for you. After sending the visitors into the scenario, Chen Ge put away the pen and paper and ran out of the haunted house. Not far away, Director Luo was chatting with a few visitors in casual attire. They were chatting enthusiastically and laughing from time to time. The few visitors probably didn't expect this kind and elegant middle-aged man to be the leader of the entire theme park. Director Luo, you're looking for me. Chen Ge waited for Director Luo to finish chatting with the visitors before he walked over. I have something important to discuss with you. Director Luo led Chen Ge to a place with fewer people, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Do you still remember when I accompanied a man to visit the theme park, and at the time, the man specifically asked about your haunted house? I do. I can't remember his name, but I think he said he would invest in our theme park to help us upgrade the facilities and expand the theme park. Chen Ge was reminded of the man. He had seen him on the phone of one of the workers at the futuristic theme park. His real name is Bai Qing. He is a very powerful real estate developer. This man loves money and will do anything for profit. Director Luo spoke very slowly. He was my classmate, so I know him very well. That man will do anything for money. He married into a wealthy family when he was very young, and he even changed his name, so not many people know his real name. Then, are we going to cooperate with him? The facilities at New Century Park are too outdated. If we don't upgrade them, it'll be hard for us to get more visitors from the futuristic theme park. Director Luo had his own concern. Currently, there are not many places for entertainment in Zhujiang. People have no choice, so they can only come to us. When the futuristic theme park opens for business, it'll be a huge blow to us. Most of their attractions are high-tech. They're different from a physical theme park like ours. I believe as long as we can withstand the pressure, the visitors will slowly return. You're underestimating their ambition. Director Luo was the pillar of the theme park. He rarely shared his concerns with outsiders to prevent them from losing morale. I've done my research. They're not only planning to build the best physical entertainment facility, they're planning to copy your haunted house as well. They've recently started a new project called Haunted Realm. Haunted Realm, a combination of real and virtual worlds, combined with a physical setting and actors. They've invested a lot of money to build the largest and most unique haunted house in the country. Director Luo turned to Chen Ge. Bai Qing showed me some internal information. The futuristic theme park wants to turn their haunted house into a large horror game that the visitors can participate in. They've designed 4 main storylines and more than 10 side storylines. Every time you make a different choice, the final result will be different. That sounds interesting. Even I feel like going in to visit. Chen Ge just wanted to have a friendly exchange and learn from them, just like when he visited Tian Tang Medical School. You sure are ambitious. Director Luo saw the glow in Chen Ge's eyes like he wanted to give it a try, and he felt a headache. Your haunted house is our theme park's signature. It is because of your haunted house that our theme park is different from other theme parks. If the visitors find a substitute, we lose our competitiveness. Then, what should we do now? Finish what they plan to do. When they open for business, the visitors will think they're playing with our leftovers. Director Luo's suggestion moved Chen Ge, but that was it. It's not a problem to increase the visitors' participation, but to integrate all the scenarios into a horror game is too difficult. Only Chen Ge knew about his situation. All the underground scenarios were related to the Black Phone, and he was only responsible for unlocking them. There's no need for you to change the existing scenarios. I'm just providing you with an idea. Director Luo shared his thoughts. The underground parking lot is limited. Do you want to consider expanding the scenario to the surface? That way, it will be more 3-dimensional. You can also add more scenes like corridors, elevators, and so on. Chen Ge's ultimate goal was to create a theme park with horror as its theme, so he could not just place all the scenarios underground. I can help you with funding and manpower. You only need to focus on the interior design. Director Luo had confidence in Chen Ge. He took out his phone and opened a document. It was a few blueprints. Your haunted house is at the northwestern corner of New Century Park. We plan to remove the fence at the northwestern corner and expand in that direction. That way, it'll be able to connect to your haunted house. The haunted house had many corridors, and the area was folded. It did not need a lot of space to create an effect that was boundless. Chen Ge was an expert in this field. The expansion of the theme park will revolve around my haunted house. The other physical attractions will be upgraded so that the shortcomings of our theme park won't be so obvious. The expansion of your haunted house is to increase the competitiveness of our theme park, to make our advantage more obvious. Director Luo's train of thought was very clear. I've found the construction workers and the design team to help you, but you have to be careful. Even though I'm the one who will oversee this group of people, they have a good relationship with Bai Qing. You have to be careful when you're designing the haunted house. At the critical moment of the park's expansion, Bai Qing was willing to invest. Logically speaking, Chen Ge should be grateful to him, but in reality, both Chen Ge and Director Luo felt that this person had other motives. I can use the construction workers, but not the interior design team. This is the core secret of a haunted house, and I cannot allow outsiders to interfere. Chen Ge rejected the offer decisively. But can you do it alone? We will make full use of the wasteland to the northwest of the theme park. The workload will be huge. Quote, I have my own team. They are my parents' friends. After my parents disappeared, I kept in touch with them. If I ask them, they will definitely come to help. Chen Ge's parents didn't have any reliable friends. Chen Ge just wanted to make up a reasonable identity for his ghost employees. That's good. If there's a chance, you can bring them here. I can help you negotiate the salary. Director Luo was not that confident in Bai Qing's people. The man was a pure businessman. Since he could give him the information about the futuristic theme park, he would definitely sell the important information about New Century Park to the futuristic theme park. For a person who valued profit above all else, everything in life had a price tag. They have their own work in the day, so they will only come here at night. Leave this to me. Chen Ge had his own plan. Building above ground was different from building underground. It required a process of construction, or at the very least, he had to put on a show. Okay, I'll leave the interior design to your team. What do you want for the exterior? Director Luo flipped through his phone. Currently, we have 3 plans. The first is to design the exterior of the scenario into a hospital, the second is to design it into an abandoned school, and the third is to build a haunted residential area. Chen Ge thought all 3 plans were good, but considering the 4-star trial mission given by the Black Phone, Chen Ge first ruled out the haunted residential area. There were already many school scenarios underground. After some consideration, Chen Ge chose the first plan, which was to make the exterior of the scenario look like a hospital. Director Luo, when you're building the scenario, remember to seal it completely to ensure that no one from the outside can see the interior. If the haunted house loses its mystery, the anticipation will greatly decrease. Chen Ge looked at the blueprint provided by Director Luo. I'll leave the exterior to you, as soon as possible. After you're done, I'll find my parents' friends to help with the interior renovation. If it's just an empty shell, it won't take that long. Director Luo pocketed his phone. After the place expands, manpower will be a problem. Tell me if you need anything, and I'll try my best to help you. Okay. After sending Director Luo away, Chen Ge turned to the northwest side of the theme park. It's not a bad idea to expand the haunted house to the surface. At least it'll be the foundation for a thriller theme park in the future. Returning to the haunted house, the visitors walked in and out. Chen Ge had Lao Zhou and Duan Yu come out to help while he returned to the staff break room to catch up on sleep. The futuristic theme park wants to create a horror game that the visitors can participate in, so I can't fall behind. Currently, most of the employees only know how to scare people. I need more employees like Lao Zhou and Duan Yu who can play different roles. If there's a chance, I'll need to conduct a training session for all the employees. Chen Ge wanted to enrich the elements of his haunted house, to add more gameplay and challenges, and that required the cooperation of all the employees. There's still a long way to go, but there's a quick way. I just need to find the type of ghost that I need. At 5 p.m., Chen Ge walked out from the staff break room. After a day of peace and quiet, he was more and more satisfied with Lao Zhou and Duan Yu. At 6:30 p.m., Chen Ge sent off the last batch of visitors. He had Xu Wan and Xiao Ji Yu, who had been busy the whole day, go home first, and he started to clean the haunted house alone. My daily routine has been completely reversed. I feel so energetic at night. With the help of the ghosts, Chen Ge soon finished cleaning. He changed into a fresh set of clothes, grabbed his backpack, and started to prepare for the trial mission that night. The Shadow once suffered a setback at White Dragon Cave Tunnel. This 3-star mission might be different from the others. Chen Ge placed the recorder, the comic, and everything else that he could carry inside his backpack. I can't let my guard down, but there's no need to be afraid. We have a common enemy, so we should be able to sit down and have a good chat. After preparing everything, Chen Ge took out the black phone, swiped the screen, and pointed at a certain spot. Do you wish to accept the 3-star trial mission, Deep Tunnel? Yes. Mission triggered. Deep Tunnel 3-star trial mission. No one knows what is at the end of the tunnel. None of the people who have entered it have returned. Mission requirement. Enter the deepest part of White Dragon Cave Tunnel before midnight. Mission hint. Cover your eyes, and perhaps you'll see the real world. Enter the deepest part of the tunnel before midnight. Does this mean the deepest part of the tunnel? The mission requirement was very vague, and Chen Ge could not make up his mind. If he failed the trial mission, the corresponding scenario would never be unlocked, so Chen Ge did not dare take the risk. I'll have to try my best to walk deeper into the tunnel, as far as I can. Chen Ge had looked up information about White Dragon Cave Tunnel before, and most of the information he could find on the internet was related to the female ghost from the car accident. In other words, people only knew that there was a female ghost who would take the car that passed by. Other things like the shadow of a spider or the weird breathing could not be found online. I should go take a look before the sky turns completely dark. Due to the many accidents that had happened at White Dragon Cave Tunnel, the city's experts had studied it and closed it down many times. However, no matter what the experts did, once the tunnel was opened, the accident would still happen. In the end, they had no choice but to close down the entire tunnel. According to the internet, the tunnel had been changed 3 times, and there were countless small changes. Some people even suggested mixing black dog's blood in the walls and burying black donkey hooves in the corners, but none of that worked. The situation inside the tunnel was complicated, and Chen Ge did not dare let his guard down. Carrying his backpack and locking the haunted house, Chen Ge left New Century Park in a hurry and hailed a cab to head to eastern Zhujiang's White Dragon Cave Tunnel. With his previous experience, Chen Ge did not dare tell the driver that he wanted to go to White Dragon Cave Tunnel directly. Instead, he politely told the driver to drive to a junction near White Dragon Cave Tunnel. The original purpose of White Dragon Cave Tunnel was to connect Zhujiang and Xinhai to become a new transportation hub. Eastern Zhujiang was surrounded by mountains and rivers. To revitalize eastern Zhujiang's economy, they had to open up a road, but this road often ran into problems. Some of the local Zhujiang elders said that Zhujiang was a place blessed by its people, and the 9 rivers formed a feng shui pattern of 9 dragons playing with pearls. Opening a road through the mountains might leak the spiritual energy of Zhujiang, so strange things kept happening on the road. Initially, no one believed this, but after too many strange things happened, the higher-ups changed their mind and closed down White Dragon Cave Tunnel. The night shrouded Zhujiang, and the closer he got to eastern Zhujiang, the fewer cars there were on the road. There were fewer tall buildings around, and the houses looked old. Driving through the old city, the driver was very enthusiastic, chatting with Chen Ge non-stop along the way. The White Dragon Cave Tunnel was at the edge of the suburbs. Before the driver reached the tunnel, there was not a single car in sight. On the road that was much narrower, there was only one street lamp every long distance. Perhaps it was because there were few people on this road, the maintenance of the road was not in place. There were often some debris on the road, and many of the street lamps on the side of the road were also damaged. I hate driving in eastern Zhujiang. The locals are very xenophobic, and they often throw things on the road. It's fine if it's an old driver like me, but if it's a young driver, it's very easy for an accident to happen, the driver complained. Those things might not have been thrown by the locals. Chen Ge had been to the border of eastern Zhejiang many times, and this place gave him a strange feeling. It refused to let living people get close. As the taxi got closer to the White Dragon Cave tunnel, the two sides became more and more desolate. The buildings were replaced by trees that stretched as far as the eye could see, and only one or two houses could be seen occasionally. Let's stop here. Chen Ge did not want to make things difficult for the driver, so he decided to spend more time walking there. After all, it was still early. Are you sure? This place is so desolate, there's not even a shadow of a person. The driver tried to persuade him, but his hand passed the WeChat QR code to Chen Ge. Chen Ge knew that the driver was just being polite. He scanned the QR code to pay, but just as he was about to get out, the driver suddenly said, "Why is there a woman?" Following the driver's gaze, Chen Ge saw a woman squatting before an old house on the left side of the road. She only had one shoe on, and the edge of her dress was torn. She squatted before the house with her head lowered like she was looking for something. The driver rolled down the window and poked his head out. The woman's body was thin, and her arms were slender. The yellow and white dress was wrinkled like someone had rubbed it. "Hey, why are you here alone?" The driver did not ask for Chen Ge's opinion and asked directly. When the woman heard the driver, she slowly raised her head. Her black hair slid down to reveal a pale face. She did not look like much, but as the saying went, fair skin covered all ugliness. She gave off a unique sense of beauty. The woman did not say anything. She slowly stood up and walked toward the taxi without a word. The bottom of her dress was torn, and it was covered in dust and dried leaves. She only had one shoe, and there was a wound on her calf. However, strangely enough, none of the wounds on her body were bleeding. Is there something wrong with this girl's mind? When a normal person encountered a situation like this, they would not associate it with ghosts, and the driver was no exception. Slap. The window was slapped, and in the blink of an eye, the woman had already walked to the side of the taxi. She stared at the driver expressionlessly, and her palm kept slapping on the window. If a person was slapped on the window alone at night, they would definitely feel uneasy, but the driver's reaction was strange. He smiled at the woman outside the window and said as if talking to himself, "It's okay, don't be afraid. I'll take you home." Then he opened the door, and the woman slid into the passenger seat. What's going on? Chen Ge sat in the back and looked at the front of the taxi. After the woman got into the car, she lowered her head and did not say a word, but the driver kept talking like he was talking to the air. It was very strange. "You've been married before. I have zero tolerance for domestic violence. If it happens once, there will be a second time. I will not let it go. I can understand why you ran away from home. You're so pitiful. Are you going to your parents' home?" "Okay, no problem." Quote. In the end, Chen Ge could not stand it anymore. He took out a ballpoint pen from his backpack and wrote something on the back of the card with the QR code, "There's something wrong with that woman." After that, he handed the card to the driver. "Sir, the QR code won't show. Can you see if there's a flaw on the card?" Quote. "There's no problem." The driver looked at the card for a long time, but he refused to look at the back of the card. "How about Alipay?" Then he took out another card and handed it to Chen Ge. Instead of accepting the card, Chen Ge glanced at the passenger seat. "Are you going to take this girl home? Where is her home? Perhaps we're going the same way, so you can take her home. If you give me a ride, I'll pay you back." Quote. The driver thought about it and agreed. She lives in a nearby village, and the place is even more deserted. "You're not going the same way, are you?" "What a coincidence, I'm going that way as well. Just keep driving, and I'll get off with her." Chen Ge pulled open the zipper of his backpack and reached his hand into it. Hearing Chen Ge's suggestion, the driver did not agree immediately. He frowned and snuck a glance at Chen Ge. There was suspicion in his eyes. Perhaps from his perspective, Chen Ge had an ulterior motive for insisting on getting out of the car with an injured woman. From his appearance, Chen Ge gave a good impression. He was friendly, kind, and polite, but the heavy backpack next to him made the driver uncomfortable. There was a faded smell of blood coming from it. "Did I run into a bad guy?" He hesitated for a moment before starting the car. Okay. The taxi continued to move forward. The driver continued to talk to the air, and the other two passengers in the car ignored him. Chen Ge stared at the woman in the passenger seat. He used his yin-yang vision to scan the woman, but he did not notice anything out of place. The woman seemed to know that Chen Ge was looking at her, and in the rearview mirror, her lips slowly curled upward. This smile, combined with her pale skin, made Chen Ge feel quite creepy. Keep smiling. Let's see if you can still smile after we get out of the car. Chen Ge grumbled internally. He had no idea where the woman's destination was, but since they had run into each other, he might as well accompany her until the end of her journey. The streetlights dimmed, and the trees on both sides swayed in the wind. Their shadows reflected on the road, and it was very uncomfortable. The driver talked to himself inside the taxi. He seemed to be having a good time chatting with the woman, but in reality, the woman had not said a single word since she got into the car. In this strange atmosphere, the taxi drove another few hundred meters before the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. The car stopped abruptly, and due to inertia, Chen Ge's head almost knocked into the back of the woman's seat. What's wrong? One of Chen Ge's hands was inside the backpack, and the other grabbed the door. If there was any danger, he would break down the door and jump out of the car. There's a child in front of us. The driver was so scared that cold sweat was pouring out of his body. He pointed at the road before them. On the left side of the road, there was a boy carrying a black plastic bag. He looked about 7 or 8, and he was wearing a light white t-shirt. His expression was anxious, like he was scared by the incoming taxi. Why is there a child in the middle of nowhere? The driver opened the window and was about to stick his head out when Chen Ge suddenly said, "I suggest you don't stop here." Are you worried that it's a scam? The driver nodded. I've also seen it on the news. Some adults deliberately let their children play on the side of the road. When a car passes by, the child will be frightened, and the adults will immediately run out to blackmail them. Because it's the child who is frightened, even if there are surveillance cameras, it's hard to tell. In the end, many people fall for it. Scammers ask for money, but what you've encountered is asking for your life. Chen Ge said in a low voice. He was also wondering if the driver had a physique that attracted ghosts. Before they even entered the White Dragon Cave, accidents had already happened one after another. Just in case, Chen Ge used yin-yang vision to scan the driver, and in the end, he realized that the man was indeed just a normal person. If the problem isn't with the driver, then it's probably because of me. Chen Ge remembered clearly that Jia Ming, who had been possessed by the shadow, had fainted outside the tunnel. As for what the shadow had done inside the tunnel that night, no one knew. Could the shadow have done something inside the tunnel? Just as Chen Ge was thinking, someone suddenly knocked on the window next to him. He turned to look, and a child's face appeared next to Chen Ge. Through the window, a smile appeared on the child's pale face. His body leaned against the window like he was looking into the car. Are you looking for something? Chen Ge also smiled. He gripped the handle of the hammer and slowly pulled it out. This was a very strange scene. The ghost outside the car was up to no good, and the person inside the car was up to no good. The child's small hands slapped on the window, and palm prints slowly appeared on the glass. The child's palms appeared to be stained with red mud, and the originally clean window was soon dirtied. The child's pale face swayed among the palm prints, and it looked quite scary. However, the driver was more worried about the passenger behind him. He seemed to be holding something in his hand, and he was smiling at the child outside the window. The two appeared to be playing some kind of game. The driver wanted to lighten the atmosphere in the car, but he opened his mouth, but he did not know what to say. Let's keep going. Don't worry about this brat. I don't think that's a good idea. The driver was hesitant. It was not that he was kind, but he was worried that the sudden start of the car would topple the child. If the child was crushed by the wheels, the consequences would be dire. Probably because he heard what Chen Ge said, the child started to slap on the window even harder, and more palm prints appeared on the glass. Keep slapping. If you dare, then go ahead and smash this window. Chen Ge seemed to have a bone to pick with the child outside the car. He looked at the child with a taunting smile. What the hell is going on? The driver was speechless. So this is not your car. If you really smash it, who am I supposed to talk to? He coughed several times and asked the woman in the passenger seat, "Do you know this child? He should be staying in a nearby village, right?" Quote. When they met a ghost, they would ask another ghost what to do. Chen Ge seemed to see his own shadow in the driver. He did not say anything, and his expression did not change. The woman in the passenger seat did not say anything, but the driver kept nodding like he was convinced by someone. He waved at the child outside the car and looked at him with hesitation. Then he opened the back door. "Come in. Since you're going to the same place, I'll drop you off together." The back door opened, and the child climbed into the car with the black plastic bag. He sat next to Chen Ge and stared at Chen Ge. "What's your name? Do you remember your parents' phone number?" The driver started the car and asked the child a few questions. After waiting for a long time, there was no reply. The driver turned to look and saw the child staring at Chen Ge. He had no idea what they were up to. "Whatever, I don't care anymore." The driver gave up. He placed the phone where he could reach it and turned on the walkie-talkie. "Is anyone in Eastern Zhejiang? There's quite a lot of work today." Quote. He was panicking and wanted to find a normal person to talk to. A middle-aged man soon replied, "You still dare to go to Eastern Zhejiang? Over the past half a month, several drivers have been injured, and some even fainted." Quote. The middle-aged man seemed to be the driver's acquaintance, and they often joked. "Don't scare me, I'm a coward. I'm being serious. Eastern Zhejiang has been very chaotic lately. You should read the news yourself." "What news? I'm running a job. Don't be so casual." "This morning, the police found." The middle-aged man stopped talking. "Found what?" The driver slapped the walkie-talkie. "Why is it broken now?" Initially, it was nothing, but when the middle-aged man said that, the driver's confidence dropped. The car slowed down, and he took out his phone to search. There had been several cases in Eastern Zhejiang recently. He skimmed through them, and his eyes were soon attracted by a piece of news. An adopted child escaped from his adoptive father's home, and his body was found on Eastern Zhejiang's Linjiang Road. "Isn't Linjiang Road the road I'm on now?" The driver clicked on the news, and the picture that entered his eyes felt familiar. This child. His body seemed to be frozen. The driver slowly raised his head and peeked at the boy in the back through the rearview mirror. At that moment, Chen Ge squeezed next to the boy. He glanced at the black bag that the boy was holding tightly. "What's inside this bag? I saw you looking for something on the side of the road before you got into the car." Quote. The boy smiled at Chen Ge, and moments later, he said, "We're almost done. We're just missing a hand."